so if you've figured out who you're sending it to, what your budget is, what format you're going to use, now you get into the guts of it. And obviously, the first thing you're going to need is text. So this is the articles, this is any kind of copy that you're going to put into the newsletter. And a lot of times you're going to end up writing this yourself, but you can also solicit people in your organizations, your volunteers, people in the field to write things for you. And I would encourage you to do that. I think that's really important. But the thing to also bear in mind is you don't know what you're going to get. You're going to ask someone to do something and they may have terrible grammar, or it may go on and on and on for pages and you're going to have to really cut that down. So it will put a lot of burden on you, and you may not get the glory, quote unquote, for it because someone else's byline is going to go on it, but it also reduces your workload because you're not writing everything in that newsletter. And sometimes that can be a hard thing if this is not your primary job. You're going to want to have others help you on this. Same thing with images. So you're an editor, but now you've also got a promotion, you're going to be a photographer as well. You can solicit images, and I think images are a little bit easier to get people to submit because not everyone feels they're a good writer, but everyone pretty much takes pictures. So you're going to be able to get solicitations of pictures, but again, they're not always going to be the kind of quality that you want. You may end up getting something from a seminar like this, and it shows the whole room with the backs of someone's head. And that's not going to look very good in your newsletter. So it's going to be important to get a good quality camera, to be ready to take pictures at different events or out in the field. So it's going to be another part of your responsibility in putting out the newsletter. We're going to talk about design in a minute, and then publishing. Basically, if you're putting out a printed piece, this is going to involve going out and getting print bids and deciding which is the best printer to work with. And obviously, if it's on an e-newsletter, you're either going to do it all in-house or you're going to find a supplier who's going to help you put it out electronically. And then there's disbursement. In addition to being the editor and the photographer, you're now also a database manager. So you're going to have to figure out, know who your audience is, but how are you going to gather that information? How are you going to arrange to have it sent to them? If it's electronic, hopefully you'll have some sort of an online sign-up form to make things a little bit easier. So that's another element to consider. I said we'd get back to design. Designing a newsletter can be a lot of fun, and if you're doing it in-house, it kind of gives you a chance to use your creative side, which is a really good thing. But it's also pretty easy to get carried away. You can see here, this has a lot of different fonts. It uses a lot of different colors. It uses different clip art, but you can't really see what's in yellow. Part of the translation. A lot of times, as fun as it is, you've got to consider how it is when someone receives it. I get a lot of, especially electronic newsletters that use yellow or use colors. And you have to think about how another person's computer is going to read it, because they're not all the same. How it looks on your computer is not necessarily how it's looking on someone else's screen. So you want to use clip art wisely. I'm not saying don't use clip art, but use it really wisely, because if you use too much, it's going to look unprofessional. Don't use too many fonts, and stick to just one or two fonts that are easily readable. And also remember that white space is your friend. You don't want to cram up all the space because it makes it hard to read. And here's an example. This is not a newsletter, but it was a really good example of font use gone amok. You can see that they thought, wow, I can use different fonts. This is fun, this is exciting, but not so much. That font on the bottom half is sort of fun. It probably would have made one good headline, but all in caps over the whole thing makes it really hard to read. So, as fun as fonts are, and I know I like to use different fonts too, control yourself. Here's a newsletter, but it's a good example of trying to use too much, or do too much. You can see white space is not there friendly. All these pictures here are all crunched together. In fact, some of the words almost get lost. They've got clip art all over the place. So it's really not doing what it's intended to do. And something else, this newsletter someone created in Word, which you can do a reasonable newsletter in Word if you need to. But you have to think about how someone's going to receive it. This was sent as a PDF, and as a result, really the first thing you see is the last page. So you want to consider how someone's going to read it, try and prepare for it, try and change it so that when it sends in an email, you're able to see it, and see it properly, so that you see the first page first, and then everything is not so crunched together. Now here's an example of a newsletter doing a nice job. They have not tried to do too much. We have just one big main photo. You can clearly see who it's from. It's only has the front page on it. They're not using too many fonts, so they're doing a good job here. Kudos go, I believe, to Chuck Fay on that. If you can, a lot of times you're not going to have the budget, but if you can, you're going to want to hire a graphic designer, which is, I'm pretty sure is the case here. This is a newsletter from the Louisiana Children's Museum, and you can see they use graphics well. They don't necessarily use clip art, but they use illustrations, but they use them well. They have a lot of white space. They're not worried about trying to fill in every space. They've used color well, which you may or may not have the budget to do color, but if you do, I do recommend hiring a graphic designer if you can. It's not always an option, but it will make your life easier if you can, and you'll get a more professional look. Going back to digital newsletters. You can create a PDF, as we said before. That's not necessarily a problem, but you have to consider that that's going to take someone an extra step. Rather than just seeing it in their email, they're going to have to click on the attachment. So they may not have the time. They may not be quite sure who you are, may be worried about making that commitment instead of clicking on it and worrying about what might be attached with it. If you send just a plain text email, that may not entice them to click on it. That just may not give them enough pizzazz. Or you can turn to an email marketing company, and there are probably 100 of them out there. I've listed just some of the suppliers. We use MailChimp. I think you guys use MyEmma, right? And these are just 4 that I'm aware of. There are tons and tons more. And then what they do is for a fee, they may custom design something for you, or you can use a template of theirs, which actually makes it very easy. If you have familiarity with software of any kind, it's usually pretty much what you see is what you get. You can type into it and play with it. Can guide you into what fonts to use that will work with their templates. Or if you have a graphic designer, you can have a designer set something up for you in one of these programs. Now, the fact that these are so easy and so widely available and really aren't terribly expensive makes me wonder why someone would do this. This is an e-newsletter that I get, and it's a published professional, and and I can't quite figure out why he does this. I mean, this looks like a text-only version if you also have an HTML version, but this is the only version that's available. And it just, I mean, it instantly made me think less of this person. Because it's just so, it's so, you know, 1984. You know, it's just, so why would you do that when you could do something like that? I mean, this is from Constant Contact. It's one of their samples on their website. It's colorful. It's got a nice banner. It clearly says who it's from. They came up with a decent title. Lots of different links to different parts of their website. And it's just easy. I just don't understand why, if you're going to go the e-newsletter route, why you would just do text. Yes?
The other thing that's really great about these programs is that, you know, you can track how many people opened it, what links were the most popular on your website, and that's really important. It tells you things that they are working with, areas that you might want to boost up.
That is an excellent point. Most of these companies, you get tons and tons and tons of information. You can see what countries people have opened it up in, whether they've clicked through, where they've clicked through, which different links they've clicked on. You know, and a lot of times what they provide for information, you can even download into a report, tailor it to the way you want it. So you're absolutely right. That is, you know, far and above makes any other kind of e-newsletter worthwhile. You know, the PDF is good, but you have no way of knowing if they've opened it. With this, you know if they've opened it, you know if they've clicked onto the website to read more, you know where they're from, and you can even target your messaging if they don't open it to send them another reminder about it, you know, in a couple of weeks. Here's another example from Constant Contact. Now, whether this is quote-unquote a newsletter or not, it does come out every week. It doesn't have a title, just the organization. They do have some news, and then they tell you what's in their fruit and vegetable box every week. But you know, it's so simple to do this. So, and it even gives you links on this one to Facebook and Twitter, so you're able to even build up that relationship with your people in your database. Some other considerations to think about when you're using digital that are really unique to digital is to think about whether they're going to have images on when they open your newsletter. Here's something I actually got just this morning. Now, most people that here that have Tulane email know that, you know, it doesn't automatically do the images, so this is the first thing that you see. And it's not really warm and receptive when you see it that way. This is actually what they thought it was going to look like. Which, I mean, to some degree you may not be able to avoid that because, you know, you want to have some sort of a banner, you want to have something decorative. But you want to make sure that there's other clues in there so that they know who it's from. You want to make sure that you have your organization name in the front field so that it's not just from John Smith and they're like, I don't know who John Smith is, I'm not going to click on this. And then also they do mention their name right in the first line. So I look down, I can see, okay, Fover Set Rock Project, I know who that is. I can click the images. You want to think about whether they have images on,